Okay, federalism, to define it, the sharing and division of power between national, state, and local governments, right? So just based on what you know, in your lifetime, has the decision-making been controlled more by the national governments or by the states? By the national governments. We see moving towards a unitary system. So this is just a timeline. Under the Articles of Confederation, right, the states controlled everything. The national government had very little power, okay? So then you get national supremacy with this new Constitution in 1789, okay? Then you start to see what's called dual federalism, okay, where the states take back some of that power, all right? And then in 1900, around 1900, you get the federal income tax. That's the 16th Amendment, 17th Amendment. We talked about direct election of senators instead of the legislature choosing the senators. The people did. That gives more power to the national government. Okay. Then during the Great Depression, Roosevelt seized a lot more power for the federal government using things like the Interstate Commerce Clause. Okay. And so you saw a lot of power of the national government. When we get to the 1990s, we see what's called devolution, like returning some of that power to the states, making more of their own decisions. Okay, like I said, we'll do a whole chapter on this, the next chapter. Okay, and then you got this, cooperative federalism, creative federalism, new federalism. But by the 1970s, guys, the national government really took over a lot. And if you look at the amount of money that the federal government gives the states, when you make states dependent on the national government, okay, kind of like Germany is dependent on Russian oil, then they can push you around. They can control you. Follow me? Ladies. You're going to get married at some point, possibly, okay? Are you going to be reliant on your husband for your subsistence? Or are you going to go out before you get married and, maybe create a career for yourself, just in case, like, hey, that marriage doesn't work out. I can take care of myself. I'm not solely dependent on somebody else for my subsistence. Okay? So, as an individual or as a state, you don't want to become dependent on somebody else. Obviously, you guys are all high school kids, and you're dependent on your parents for a lot. Some of you more than others. Some of you guys have jobs and have to pay for stuff, and some of you don't. Okay? So with that dependence comes control. Okay? So those are what we have a lot of big arguments in this country about, is over federalism. Who gets to make the decision? And we know this, the national government is supreme over the states. We know that. We grant that. But should they be making every decision for us? And a really good example of that, guys, is COVID. Okay? And when you look at the different states, some states are just now opening up, like California, Washington State, Oregon, New York, right? But Kansas has been open for a while. That's federalism, right? We get to make that decision at a state and local level. Okay? Now, if you go to Lawrence, Kansas, that's different. It's like going to New York, California, okay? But now in Wichita, Sedgwick County. Good? All right. All right, so I drew this slide in here. I felt it was something I should do. I just took these from my honors notes. So it's not in the notes I published. I'll put this up somewhere. I'll put it in a file on Canvas, okay? But this is what we just talked about with the first three branches. Article 1, legislative, Article 2, executive, Article 3, judicial, okay? And then we'll do chapters on each of those. So the last three chapters of this class will be those three branches, okay? So let's jump into Article 4. So this is what we were just talking about, relationship between the national government and the states, okay? So in the Constitution, in Article 4, you have something called the full faith and credit clause, okay? And basically what that says is that one state must recognize another state's official documents. Okay, so if you want to be a real estate agent in the state of Kansas, you know what you got to get? You got to get a license. If you want to be a teacher in the state of Kansas, you got to get a license. If you want to drive a car in the state of Kansas, you need a license. Now, can you use this license in any of the other 49 states? Have you driven across state lines? Yeah, legally with this. Yes? You know why that is? Because of the full faith and credit clause in the 4th article of the Constitution. But you didn't know that, right? Marriage licenses. The national government doesn't do marriage licenses. States do marriage licenses. Death certificates, okay? I was married in one of the most corrupt states of the Union, Louisiana, okay? Those people down there, man, they're crazy, okay? But when I moved to Kansas, Kansas had to recognize my marriage license from Louisiana. Does that make sense? So when I go to pay taxes in Kansas, I file married jointly, okay? And that's based on the law of following those things, okay? Now, let me throw something at you because I like to have this discussion. Way back when, before you guys were born, Massachusetts was the first state to allow gay marriage. Now, that was pretty radical. They were the first state to do this, okay? Well, you get married, a same-sex couple gets married in Massachusetts, and then let's say they move to Alabama, this gay married couple. Well, Alabama, what you talking about? Gay marriage. We don't do that down here. So does Alabama have to recognize this gay marriage? Under the Constitution, it says you do. And you guys know there's benefits with gay marriage, right? With just marriage, there's benefits. Like you pay less in taxes if you're married. You have other benefits like insurance. So like I get my health insurance through my wife's job. When she retires, I'll keep working and she'll get her insurance through my job. You follow me? Well, Alabama's like, hey, we're not doing that. So the U.S. Congress passed a law called the Defense of Marriage Act, saying that one state, Alabama, did not have to recognize a gay marriage from another state. Because these conservative states, they were like, no, we don't want this. Is that law, Defense of Marriage Act, unconstitutional? Absolutely. All you got to do is read the Constitution. But that law, guys, stood for 13 years. Remember yesterday when I talked about Brown versus Board of Education, Roe versus Wade. There's got to be a victim of the law, yes, for somebody to sue, to challenge that law. There were challenges to that law. There were gay couples because Hawaii was next. Hawaii went gay marriage, okay? And then it just kind of started trickling. And So people challenge the law, but guys, the courts only take cases, especially the Supreme Court. They only take cases they want to hear. So if you get 4 Supreme Court justices that want to take a case, they'll take it. But if you don't get 4, they don't take the case. So this unconstitutional law stood for 13 years. Okay? Because the Supreme Court knew the United States of America was not ready for gay marriage. The whole country wasn't. Okay? Then in 2017, there was a challenge. This was found unconstitutional. And then there was a challenge that gay marriage is a right. And the Supreme Court and the 14th Amendment, which says equal protection under the law for all citizens. If same-sex people want to get married, they have a right to do that. Okay? Now that could open a Pandora's box. Because, well, if I have 2 women that love me and I love them, can I marry 2 women? Or 3? Equal protection under the law. Can I marry my dog? That's what I want to do. You know what they call that, right? Yes. All right. All right. So, privileges and immunities. Now, this is important too, guys. This is just knowing our system of government, okay? Now, if you rob a liquor store with a gun in Wichita, Kansas, okay? You take off, cops are chasing you, and you get to 135 and you're flooring it south. You're headed for Oklahoma, okay? Can Kansas State troopers follow you in Oklahoma? Yeah, they have a driver's license. Can they arrest you in Oklahoma? No. So what they'll do is the Kansas State troopers will call ahead to the Oklahoma State troopers and say, look, we're chasing this guy, dangerous situation. If you guys can stop him, please do. He's wanted for armed robbery. The liquor store. Okay? So the Oklahoma State troopers stop this guy, throw down some spikes or whatever, and they arrest him. Can the Oklahoma State troopers turn him over to the Kansas State troopers? No. There's a process. So they will detain this person. The governor of Kansas will call the governor of Oklahoma and say, you guys have this person in possession. We would like to extradite them back to Kansas and hold them, for this armed robbery. Okay? There's a process. Well, what if you make it to Mexico? Are you free and clear? Mexico. We have extradition treaties with Mexico. We have extradition treaties with most countries in the world. Now, if you're thinking about committing a heinous crime and fleeing the countries we don't have extradition treaties with, you would probably rather be in a federal prison in the United States than be in those countries. Say, North Korea or Iran. Okay? No, you don't want to be in Iran, especially as a Christian. You're an infidel. Okay? So, now, financial crimes, do you know where people like to go? Switzerland. Okay, they have some interesting laws there. Okay, so like you hear about people hiding money in Swiss banks and that sort of thing. Okay, they do not share information with governments. So it's a safe haven. There's also some banking in the Bahamas that you can use to hide money. Okay. And people do that. People that get money illegally, that they don't want to pay taxes on. It happens. Okay. I knew a guy. Well, okay, so he created an online gambling site. This is before like they legalized a lot of this stuff. Yeah. And he was making millions. Okay. Sending it down to the Bahamas. Oh yeah. Okay. I think the IRS eventually caught up with him. They did a settlement with him, paid some taxes and stuff, but yeah. Okay. Here's some other things. Okay. With privileges and immunities. If you are, you all are residents of Kansas. So if you go to Wichita State University or Fort Hays or K-State, KU, or Emporia State, Pitt State, those are all state universities, right? So if you live in Kansas, you pay what kind of tuition? Okay. If you move to another state and go out of state to go to college, okay, you pay out of state tuition, okay, which can be expensive. Did you guys look at that? Is the scholarship money going to help kind of take care of some of that?
Yeah, they make first Nebraska lets in-state after neighboring states.
Good. Cool. Yeah, so, and I know like we have agreements with like Oklahoma State. If you score a certain number on the ACT, you get in-state. Because we have several students from here at Oklahoma State right now. Yeah, so sometimes you make those agreements, and sometimes you don't have them, so you pay out-of-state tuition. Okay, this happened to me when I moved to Kansas. So I had a business degree back from '91 when I was playing college baseball, and then I decided that I wanted to teach and coach, and so I was 27 when I decided to do that, and I also moved to Kansas, married my wife, and came here, and I enrolled at Wichita State University in January of '96, okay, to get a teaching license. And so I went for a full year, full time. I was working as well. I had a job. I was working 20, 25 hours a week. I did graphic arts in a former life. I don't know if I ever told you guys that. Okay, so publishing, building print advertising type stuff on a computer. Okay, now we didn't have as good of computers back then. Okay, or software programs, but we had some good ones. And so anyhow, I was working full time. Actually, we weren't married yet when we got here. So we got here, then went back to Louisiana, got married. And so after a year, I assumed that I would get in-state tuition because I was working here. I was paying taxes for a year, So next year I went to enroll at Wichita State, and they said, you got to pay out-of-state tuition. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. My Kansas teaching license that I would be getting is only valid in Kansas. Like if I were to leave the state and go to Texas and teach, they would let me teach, but I would have to take some classes like Texas history, okay, to be able to, get a license there. And so I'm like, why would I come from Louisiana to Kansas to get a Kansas teaching degree to move back to Louisiana? Is it because Wichita State has an incredible education program? Teacher program? No, they don't. I can tell you that. Okay. Now, Emporia State has a great teaching program. It's one of the best in the country. Okay. But so I went through the appeals process and all that. And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? I'm going to live in Kansas. My wife is working in Kansas. So it pissed me off. So you know what I did? I did what those Ukrainian soldiers did. I said, Wichita State. And I went to Newman. And I finished at Newman. Okay. Now I had to pay private tuition there. which was at the time was very close to out-of-state tuition in Wichita State, and I could finish the semester earlier. Now, when I wanted to get my master's in history, Newman and Friends don't offer that. So I had to go crawling back to Wichita State. Now, what I did do to stick it to the man was this. I had Florida tags on my Ford Explorer. Okay? In Florida, it costs like $50 to renew your tags. In Kansas, you know your tags are based on the value of your vehicle. So like when I bought a new truck and I had to get tags, it cost me like almost $800 to get a new tag. So I'm not a resident of Kansas. I'm going to keep my Florida tags. And I said, hey, Dad, I called Dad back in Florida. I said, Dad, will you renew my tags? And so I actually got a job teaching here at Carroll, and I still had Florida tags on my truck. And people ask, why you got Florida? Well, let me tell you a story. Okay. So that's your privileges. Yeah. Yeah. That's your privileges. Okay. Now, let's talk about the law. If you go to Nebraska or Oklahoma, are you expected to know the laws of that state and those local communities? The answer is yes. You are subject to their laws. Okay? Now, they can't treat you different because you're from another state. That's your immunity. Okay? The privilege is that, what we talked about with in-state tuition. Okay? So, you're expected to know the law. Okay, you guys know Sebastian? Castro, is that it? Castro? I just know him as Sebastian. He's in my third hour. Okay, nice kid. So there's a not a law, but an ordinance in Wichita, Kansas, that if you play your music from your vehicle, and you got like subwoofers, right? And you can hear that music from more than 50 feet away, you can get a ticket for that. Sebastian got one. He was at the car wash cleaning his car. He was bumping, right? And it's in my business law class, so we're talking about this, ordinances and laws and stuff like that. So he said it was $90, but the cop gave him a break. He said it's actually more than that, but he kind of like cut him some slack. Okay. Now, okay, so let's say you have a cop that used to work in Wichita, moves to Nebraska, okay, and Sebastian's going up to Nebraska for something, going for a football game or something. And he gets into Nebraska, he's in York, and this cop that used to work in Wichita now works in York, and he hears this thumping noise coming from this car, and he pulls Sebastian over and he sees his plates, Sedgwick County. He's from Wichita. Okay? Can that cop in York, Nebraska enforce the law in Wichita? The ordinance? No. Okay? This is just the things, that come up with privileges and immunities. Okay? The next thing is, in Article 4, they talk about adding new states. So before Kansas was a state, it was a territory. You got to have 60,000 people live in a territory, and they have to apply to become a state. Okay? And they write a state constitution. Congress has to approve that to admit them into the union. Okay? So that process is all laid out there. And then there are certain obligations that the national government has to the states. Okay? They guarantee that we get to vote for our elected officials. The national government says to the states, you have to let your people elect their own representatives. Okay? That's Republican government. Okay? Protection against invasion or domestic violence. Okay, so national government has that obligation to protect the states. Now, if there is a flood of illegal immigrants coming across the southern border, guys, immigration is a federal power. States are not allowed to do it. But if the national government is not protecting the state of Texas, or Arizona, can they do it on their own? And this has been attempted by some of the states. And the courts have said you cannot use your local police or your state police to enforce immigration laws. It's a federal power. Okay? So you're kind of stuck waiting on the federal government to act. Okay? Using the military to keep the peace. Now, normally, guys, we use what's called the National Guard. Okay, so there's a trucker convoy coming to Washington, D.C. for Joe Biden's State of the Union address. Okay, they're going to call out the National Guard just for safety purposes. Okay, very rarely does the U.S. military, the Army, used on domestic soil. Okay, there's something called posse comitatus. Okay, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, so you can't use your own troops on your own soil. That's in our Constitution. Now, if there's a state of emergency, an invasion, or something like that, of course you can do that. Okay, and I'll refer you back to the movie from the 1980s, Red Dawn. Seen it? It's outstanding. Right. Freaking fabulous. All right. Red Dawn. Check it out this weekend. Okay. They cannot change the border of Kansas without our permission. They have to respect our borders, the national government. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Virginia used to be a lot bigger than it was today, than it is today. During the Civil War, Virginia seceded from the Union illegally, but they seceded. So while Virginia was fighting during the Civil War, the national government went ahead and changed its borders and created West Virginia without their permission because they were not a state, I guess. Okay. Yeah, so this is that relationship between the national government and the relationship between the states. Okay. Article 5 is amending the Constitution. Okay? And we're about out of time. So let me just pull that up. Okay. And it's pretty simple. So Article 5, there's two ways to propose an amendment. There's two ways to ratify this, an amendment, and we have 27 of them. First 10 were the Bill of Rights, yes? So only 17 times in 230 years, 240 years have we amended the Constitution, okay? So we'll go through that process on Monday, and we'll start doing going through the amendments. Cool? Cool, Mr. Ebright.
Well,